Yo, what is up, guys? It's Pedro here, and in today's video, we'll be talking about the Washington Commanders being favorites to land the Browns' premier pass rusher, Myles Garrett. And I'll talk about some other articles linking the Commanders to Myles Garrett as well. If you guys are new, make sure to subscribe. Do all that good stuff. We're like 25 subscribers away from 15K. I know we can do it. Been trying to hit it for a minute. It's free. Takes 1 second. But let's get right into the video. No BS. Let's just start talking about this. So, this doesn't mean that they're going to get him or anything right now, but just right now, the odds are favoring the Washington Commanders to get Myles Garrett. That makes sense. They have, top 3 cap space in the NFL, and they are one of the few elite teams, or at least contending teams, that have a lot of cap space. So they have the third most in the NFL right now, and there actually just was a cap update. I'll talk about that in a second with the whole league, but also the Commanders as well. But right now, the Commanders are betting favorites to land Myles Garrett. And this article talks about it right now. Depending on the books, the Commanders are plus 300, then the Eagles, and then the Bills. The Eagles don't have a lot of cap space, but they always can find a way to make these trades work. So I'm really hoping the Eagles aren't able to get him, because if they do, that would be bad news. That would be bad news for sure for the Commanders, for the rest of the league. And then you got the Bills as a third team. I think the Browns, it's not a huge deal because it's not a quarterback, but I think they would prefer to trade outside the conference. They're definitely not trading in the division, so forget the Bengals, the Ravens, any of those teams, which, some people consider both of those contenders. Obviously the Bengals need to get a little bit better, but they have a top 5 quarterback. So, those are teams that, normally maybe would be going for a guy like Myles Garrett, but now, because they're in the same division, they're not going to be able to get him. So I think the Commanders, throwing the Eagles, the Bills, those are the top teams. Lions as well are, teams to watch out for. I think it'll cost minimum a first and an early day 2 pick plus another pick. Could be 2 firsts and a play. It depends on the contract situation, if they can agree to a deal. I think that's probably, would need to happen before a trade gets done, is the team that's trading for him agrees to contract terms. But I would say it starts with a first and early day 2 pick, so probably a first, a second, and then a player / another pick. And it could be 2 firsts as the price for Garrett. It also, obviously depends on where the teams are picking. The Commanders are picking 29. The Bills are 30. The Eagles are 32. So the contending teams are going to be picking much later. And maybe a team that's not contending, but maybe that they have cap space, like the Patriots. Maybe if they wanted to trade for him, it definitely wouldn't cost more than 1 first round pick. If they give up their first round pick from this year, which is, I don't know exactly what it is, but I think it's 4 or 5. I know the Titans are 1. I think then it's the Browns and then the Giants. I just haven't been paying attention to the top of the board because we're not there. So it's good to be not focusing on that. I know a lot of the players and stuff that are going in that high, but in terms of, the teams, I haven't memorized the 15 top 20 teams like I usually do, or wherever until the Commanders are. But these are the odds. We'll talk about Myles Garrett because it's been a little bit since we talked about him, but obviously still an elite player. This past year, I was about to say 11.5 sacks, but no, that was stuffs. 14 sacks the year before, 16 the year before that, 16 the year before that, 12, 10, 13.5, and 7. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, I believe, if he continues this for another couple years, no doubt about it. And yeah, he's a top 3 pass rusher in this league, probably 1. You can debate him. It's him. You can throw in a couple other names out there like Micah Parsons, Nick Bosa, but Nick Bosa's had a couple down years, at least for him, TJ Watt, but I think Myles Garrett is number 1. So, Trey Hendrickson also deserves a mention. But yeah, definitely would be willing to give up, if push comes to a shove, I would be willing to give up 2 firsts for Garrett. That's it, though. I'm not giving up much more than that. Maybe like a future pick, like a later pick, if that's what needs to get, that's what the Browns need to get it done, whatever. More than that, like 2 firsts plus a player, that's a little bit much. And Myles Garrett's a stud. He's we already talked about the stats, and he's still, somewhat young. I mean, I wouldn't say young for NFL standards, but he's got some more years left. But you also have to consider he is 29. He's not 25, 26. So, he does have time left. He does have, a few years, one more contract left in the NFL, but it's not like a Max Crosby where you get him for the next 8, 9, 10 years. At least I don't think so. But Myles Garrett is superhuman, so maybe he can stay in the league a little bit longer than everyone else thinks. Let me go ahead and pull up this tweet. I just put up a tweet right before this, and I was saying, Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, Trey Hendrickson, and Khalil Mack need the Commanders to get one of them. And obviously, it would be cool to get two of them. I really am liking the idea of signing Khalil Mack. It's going to be much cheaper, and you're not going to have to give up draft compensation to get him compared to Crosby, Garrett, and Hendrickson. He may be not at the same level as those guys, but, PFF graded him as a top 5 pass rusher this past year. You got to take PFF with a grain of salt, but and I can't really add much to that because I didn't watch a lot of Chargers football this year. I know the year before he had 15 sacks or something, 17, 16, had 7 in one game or 6 in one game, which was insane, something like that. Maybe I'm gassing him up, but I believe that was the case. And he's a really good run defender, one of the best in the league. So you can sign him to a Bobby Wagner type deal, 1-year deal, and maybe draft a guy, and you're fine. Maybe they can pull off 2. Maybe they can get Myles Garrett and Khalil Mack at that point. I would love that. I think that's a little bit of overkill. I don't think you need to do that. I think you can do that. It would be amazing, but they could also sign Khalil Mack and then use some, that other money to, sign an offensive lineman or use that DN on a draft selection for the future. They're just something to watch out for as well. But the Commanders have a lot of options. Let me go ahead and look up Khalil Mack's stats. And I mentioned Trey Hendrickson. I mentioned Max Crosby. Those guys are not on the trade block yet. Yeah, 17 sacks in 2023. That's insane. They're not on the trade block yet. But, they're both in interesting situations. The Raiders are probably rebuilding. They don't have a quarterback. They have a higher draft pick. So they could maybe be into, new general manager, new head coach, I believe. So they might be enticed to trade Max Crosby. And then Trey Hendrickson, they have he wants a new contract. If they're not willing to give it to him, they might have to trade him. So you look at Khalil Mack this past year, 6 sacks, so not a ton, but 2 forced fumbles, a fumble recovery, had a bunch of stuffs, or not, I guess not a bunch. He had a bunch of pass, deflections or whatever. He batted down passes, but year before, 17 sacks, which is just insane. The year before that with the Chargers had 8 sacks, which is still pretty good. Year before that had 6, but in 7 games. So he was on pace for 14. Year before that, 9, 8.5, 12.5, 10. I mean, Khalil Mack. And it's not all about the sacks. He's been a very good run defender his whole career. But Khalil Mack, I don't know what the contract would look like for him. But I think it would be a really good signing for the Commanders. He's probably my top free agent I want the Commanders to sign is Khalil Mack. I would take him over Dante Fowler in a heartbeat. I like Dante Fowler. He's cool, but I think Khalil Mack's a better player, and I think Dante Fowler might get a little bit more money than he's necessarily worth, or at least what I would pay him if I was the GM. Obviously, I'm not, and I don't have a job in the NFL, but that's just my take on the situation. I think Dante Fowler's cool, but he's not an elite pass rusher, and teams might pay him not as an elite pass rusher, but might give him a multi-year deal, a little bit of money because of the sack production, and I just rather go elsewhere with that money, with Khalil Mack or Josh Sweat maybe, but that's going to be a lot of money too. Or you can just go to the draft and get a guy as well. But the Commanders, I think edge rusher is the top of their priority list, just because you look at the Eagles, how they're built. They're dominant in the trenches. They have a really good offensive line. They have a really good defensive line. How do you combat that? You add guys in the trenches, and that's adding a guy like Myles Garrett, who would be the best player out of those two groups, the Eagles and the Commanders, offensive line, defensive line for both teams. Myles Garrett would be the best player. Obviously, they would still have the better group overall, but it's, that's a good start to get a guy like Myles Garrett in your room, and then you can start building from there. Sam Cosmi coming back from injury, maybe you draft some guys as well at the offensive line position and continue to beef up that defensive line. That defensive line looks a lot better once you got Myles Garrett there. You got Deron Payne, John Allen in the middle next to Myles Garrett. Sounds a lot better. And then you got Johnny Newton as well, and then whoever the other edge rusher, probably Dorrance Armstrong, who honestly had an underrated year. But that's it for today's video. If you guys stayed till the end, go ahead and comment down. I'm trying to think of what's his name? I'm trying to think of the receiver that I think it was Robert Davis, the receiver that caught the first touchdown from Dwayne Haskins and it was in the preseason, and I was there. Yeah, so I believe it's Robert Davis. Just go ahead and comment that down below. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoy it, and peace.